Usually when we talk about a map, there's this expectation of just perfect representation.
Right.
Like, you look at a map of a city and you see the clean grid lines, the blue strip for the river, the little green square for the park. And the cartographer just points and says, there it is. That is the city.
It's a very rational, static model. I mean, you can memorize the legend, you can study the intersections, and basically operate under this illusion that you've completely conquered the geography.
Yes, exactly. But then you actually step out of the subway station onto the pavement, and suddenly that perfect map feels, well, entirely inadequate.
Yeah, totally.
Street signs are missing, or there's like a really loud construction project detouring the traffic, or the locals are calling the neighborhood by some nickname that is just nowhere on your map. It's messy, it's loud, it's fast, and it's breathing.
Because the map is not the territory. The theory rarely matches the reality on the ground, especially, when humans are involved.
Right. And that incredible, sometimes just overwhelming gap between the map and the messy reality is exactly what we're exploring today in this custom-tailored deep dive.
It's a really fascinating gap to explore, honestly.
It really is. And for you listening, our mission today is highly focused. We have a source document that is hyper-concentrated. We are essentially analyzing a single, incredibly potent title.
Just the one title, yeah.
Exactly. The entirety of our source material today is focused on one specific linguistic concept, and its title, Natural English Phrasal Verbs for Authentic Daily Conversations.
What's fascinating here is that the source deliberately positions itself away from the map and squarely in the territory.
Oh, I like that way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't promise standard English instruction or grammar rules or, static vocabulary lists. It promises natural and authentic interaction.
Right.
And that immediately draws this really thick line between the rigid language you learn in a classroom and the fluid reality of how people actually speak to each other.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this because I am genuinely fascinated by how a single grammatical concept, the phrasal verb, is positioned by our source material as the ultimate key to unlocking something as massive and honestly as intimidating as authentic English.
It is a massive claim.
It's like being handed a tiny brass key and being told it opens up an entire metropolis. So, to understand why this source places so much weight on this specific tool, we first have to understand the underlying problem it's trying to solve.
Which is that massive gap you mentioned.
Exactly. There seems to be this huge gap between technically correct language and natural language.
Yeah, and if we look closely at the source text, the choice of adjectives is our first real clue.
You mean natural and authentic?
Exactly. Natural and authentic. We have to break down the philosophical difference between just having the ability to speak a language and speaking it authentically.
Right, because those aren't the same thing.
Not at all. When you learn a language in a formal setting, you're taught the architecture. You learn the subject, the verb, the object. You learn how to construct a sentence that is grammatically flawless.
The map, basically.
The map, exactly. But the source's heavy emphasis on the word authentic suggests a really profound warning, which is that you can be 100% technically correct and yet still sound completely unnatural in a real-world setting.
It's kind of like running a perfect translation algorithm. You're outputting flawless syntax, but the humans around you are still looking at you slightly sideways because, well, something in the rhythm is just off.
Right, because authentic language isn't just about transferring data from one brain to another. It's about signaling belonging.
Oh, wow. Signaling belonging.
Yeah, it's about shared culture and mutual understanding. The source is arguing that without this specific toolkit it offers, a speaker might be technically flawless, but culturally jarring to interact with.
Culturally jarring. That's a great phrase.
Authenticity implies a truth to the human experience that just goes way beyond mere vocabulary.
Okay, let me push back on that a little bit, playing devil's advocate for you listening.
Sure, go for it.
If I spend years mastering standard, formal English like the English of academic papers of international news broadcasts, classic literature, are we saying that is somehow a lie? Is formal language inherently inauthentic?
That is a really crucial distinction, and it comes down to context rather than inherent value.
Okay, context.
Right. Formal English is not a lie, nor is it fake. Authentic does not mean better than formal. Authentic means fitting the environment.
Okay, I'm following you.
Think about biological ecosystems. A polar bear is a perfectly authentic, highly evolved animal, right?
Sure.
But if you drop it into the middle of the Sahara Desert, it's going to struggle massively because its adaptations just do not fit the context.
No, I see.
Formal English is highly authentic to a courtroom or a university lecture hall. But the environment our source material specifically targets is the daily conversational sphere.
The Sahara in this analogy.
Exactly. In that specific ecosystem, utilizing rigid textbook English creates friction.
So it's not about right or wrong. It's about the cognitive dissonance you create when you bring the wrong adaptations into a specific environment.
Precisely. If you use highly formalized language in a casual setting, you create an invisible barrier.
Yeah, you sound like a robot.
Right. You're communicating the literal meaning of your words.
Yeah.
But you are also accidentally communicating distance, formality, and perhaps even coldness.
Wow, just by using the wrong type of correct word.
Yeah. To survive the ecosystem of daily interaction, you need the right adaptations. And the source points us to the exact mechanism required for that adaptation.
Which is the core of our document, phrasal verbs.
Yes.
Since the source explicitly pairs this grammatical structure with achieving natural English, we really need to get into the mechanics of why this specific tool carries so much immense weight.
Well, the mechanism of a phrasal verb is unique. You're taking a standard verb, an action word like put or take, and you're combining it with a preposition or an adverb like off or up. But the critical factor here is that when you combine them, you do not get a literal mixture of the two words.
No, it becomes something else entirely.
Exactly. You create an entirely new, distinct meaning that is completely divorced from the original parts.
Right. Like if I say, put up with, I am not physically putting anything, and I'm not moving anything up, I am enduring something.
Exactly. And to understand how this creates authenticity, we really have to contrast the mechanics of a formal verb with a phrasal verb.
Okay.
Take a formal Latin-derived word like postpone.
Yeah.
That is a single, clean, precise word.
Very clean.
But the phrasal verb equivalent is put off.
Mm.
Now, grammatically, put off is actually messier. It's two words instead of one. And the literal meaning of those words has absolutely nothing to do with delaying an event.
Right.
Yet native speakers overwhelmingly prefer put off in daily conversation.
Wait, if postpone is a single word and put off is two, isn't the single word technically more efficient?
You would think so, yeah.
I mean, if I'm a language learner trying to optimize my learning, why wouldn't I just memorize postpone? It seems mathematically simpler. Why does the native brain prefer the two-word phrasal verb in a daily context?
It seems totally counterintuitive, but it actually comes down to cognitive processing and the deep history of the English language.
Oh, we're getting into history now. I love it.
Yeah. So words like postpone, acquire, or assemble, they largely entered the English language through French and Latin.
Right, the Norman conquest and all that.
Exactly. They came via scholars, lawyers, and aristocrats. They're what you might call top-down words.
Okay.
But the core action verbs put, get, take, make, those are Old English. They are the Anglo-Saxon bedrock of the language.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. So you were saying these base words are wired into the brain much earlier in human development.
Yes, absolutely. When a child is 1 or 2 years old, they learn spatial reality. Up, down, in, out, off, on.
Right, the basics.
And they learn basic physical actions. Put, take, get. These words are processed in the brain with a very low cognitive load because they are foundational.
They're almost instinctual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even when you combine them into an abstract concept like put off, the brain still processes those familiar early childhood syllables much more smoothly and emotionally than a later acquired multisyllabic Latinate word like postpone.
Wow. That fundamentally changes how I view this. I mean, the source isn't just giving us a grammar rule, it's pointing us toward the emotional bedrock of the language.
It really is.
When you use postpone, you are engaging the intellectual formal part of the listener's brain. But when you use put off, you're speaking to the intuitive early childhood linguistic center. You are literally softening the neurological impact of the sentence.
That is the exact mechanism of how phrasal verbs create natural, authentic speech. They reduce the formal cognitive load.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, they make the listener feel ease because the vocabulary being used is rooted in the most familiar foundational sounds of the language.
It almost operates like a code, you know? Like if I combine word A and word B, and the meaning is entirely abstracted from the literal definitions, then you really only know what it means if you're inside the culture.
Right.
So are phrasal verbs essentially the secret handshake of a language?
The secret handshake analogy is a really powerful way to look at it, but let's push that just a bit deeper.
Okay, push away.
A standard secret handshake is a conscious action. You do it deliberately to prove you're in the club.
Right. You wink and do the handshake.
Exactly. But phrasal verbs are an unconscious handshake. When two people are conversing and one uses a string of phrasal verbs, they aren't consciously trying to prove anything.
It's just happening naturally.
Yeah. But neurologically, they are sending a rapid, unspoken signal that says, I understand the hidden architecture of how we communicate. I share your cultural context.
And conversely, if you only use formal, single-word verbs, you are accidentally signaling that you're an outsider, even if your grammar is, like, absolutely perfect.
Exactly. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, it explains why someone who has memorized the list of 10,000 advanced vocabulary words can still sound incredibly unnatural.
Right.
If you use extract instead of takeout or deposit instead of put down in a casual setting, you sound like a 19th century aristocrat giving a lecture.
I'm just picturing someone wearing a monocle at the grocery store.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It creates immediate social distance. Advanced, single-word verbs are perceived as stiff and academic.
Right.
The source isolates phrasal verbs because they are the exact bridge over that gap we talked about in the beginning. They are the linguistic shorthand that transforms towering, rigid sentences into flowing, comfortable dialogue.
So it's not about dumbing down your language at all. It is about emotional intelligence. You're choosing the modular combined verbs because they feel light and breezy to the listener.
It is entirely about emotional intelligence. Phrasal verbs are the lifeblood of fluency because they represent the psychological reality of how people want to connect with each other.
Which is easily and informally, right?
Easily, informally, and intimately. You are sacrificing formal precision in order to prioritize social comfort.
Which seamlessly brings us to the final element of our source material. We have the goal, which is authenticity. We have the tool, the cognitive shortcut of phrasal verbs.
Okay.
Now, the text directs us to the specific arena where this toolkit must be deployed, which is daily conversation.
And the phrase daily conversation is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this title.
Right.
We really need to unpack what makes the daily aspect so vital to human sociology.
Okay, let's do it.
We're not talking about keynote speeches or job interviews here. We are talking about unscripted, spontaneous, low-stakes interactions.
Like the chat with the barista while you wait for your coffee, or the 3-minute catch-up with a coworker while you're both walking to the parking lot,
Yeah.
or talking to your neighbor over the fence about the weather.
Sociologists often categorize this as small talk, which is a term that unfortunately sounds kind of dismissive.
Yeah, it has a bad rap.
It does. But these low-stakes interactions are the absolute foundation of human society. In a formal presentation or a legal negotiation, the stakes are incredibly high. And the language is consequently highly guarded, structured, and precise.
Because you're transferring complex data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in daily conversation, data transfer is completely secondary.
If data transfer is secondary, what is the primary goal?
The primary goal is synchronization. It's about building rapport, establishing trust, and maintaining social harmony.
Synchronization.
Right. When you ask your coworker how their weekend was, you don't actually need a chronological ledger of their activities.
Right. I don't need a spreadsheet of what they did at 2 p.m. on Saturday.
Exactly. You are simply establishing that you're both safe, cooperative members of the same social group. It is the social glue.
So what does this all mean for how we use language in these spaces? I mean, for the listener trying to apply this, how do we visualize this clash between formal knowledge and these casual arenas?
Good question.
Think about wearing a perfectly tailored, incredibly expensive, highly formal tuxedo.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And you decide, you know what, I'm going to wear this tuxedo to my casual, slightly messy neighborhood coffee shop on a Tuesday morning.
The visual is striking, and the social reaction would be immediate.
Right. You walk in, and technically there is nothing wrong with the tuxedo. In fact, it is flawlessly constructed. You look absolutely put together. But you are completely jarringly out of place. You make everyone around you slightly uncomfortable because the context demands casual attire, and you are radiating formal intensity.
That's a great way to put it.
Speaking standard, formal textbook English in a daily conversation is exactly like wearing that tuxedo to the coffee shop. You are technically flawless, but you're creating massive friction.
Yeah.
The phrasal verbs, on the other hand, are the linguistic equivalent of throwing on your favorite perfectly worn-in pair of jeans and a comfortable sweater.
That analogy holds up perfectly when you consider the sociology of the coffee shop. The tuxedo is intimidating. It makes the barista feel like they're being evaluated rather than conversed with.
Yeah.
The source material is acting as a social roadmap here. It promises that by mastering these specific dynamic linguistic tools, these modular Anglo-Saxon-based verbs, the user can navigate the subtle, unwritten complexities of daily social interactions seamlessly.
You're learning how to dress your thoughts in denim instead of silk?
Exactly. So that the people around you feel comfortable approaching you.
It radically reframes the entire concept of what it means to learn a language, or really any new skill. It stops being an academic exercise of memorizing charts and tables.
It becomes an exercise in profound human empathy.
Empathy, yes. You are learning these complex, sometimes frustrating grammatical quirks not to pass a test, but because you want to make the listener feel safe. You want to speak to them in their own emotional register.
Empathy is exactly what is at the core of this. When you make the deliberate effort to learn the natural rhythm of a language, the idioms, the shortcuts, the phrasal verbs, you're showing immense respect for the culture of the people who speak it. You're stepping out of the safe, predictable geometry of your map, and you are wading into the beautiful, messy reality of their daily lives.
Which is hard.
It is. It requires vulnerability. You have to let go of the rigid control of standard grammar and trust the flow of natural speech.
You just have to accept that language is a living, breathing thing, not a math equation.
And, as the source implies, accepting that reality is the only path to true authenticity. You cannot logic your way into a community. You have to sync with its rhythm.
That is an incredibly profound takeaway from a single sentence. For you listening right now, we really want to summarize the surprising weight carried by our source material today.
It's a lot packed into a few words.
It really is. We started by looking at a brief title about phrasal verbs, but this deep dive has revealed that true mastery of communication isn't just about clinical correctness.
Right.
It's not about proving how many words you know or how perfectly you can structure a sentence. It is about connection.
Connection over perfection.
Exactly. It's about understanding the cognitive and emotional load of the words you choose, taking off the formal tuxedo, and leaning into the natural, authentic rhythm of our everyday chats.
This raises an important question, though, and it's a thought we want to leave you with today.
Okay, what is it?
Well, we've explored how our source material positions phrasal verbs as the unconscious secret handshake for authentic English conversation. But the psychology of in-groups and communication is universal.
Right, it applies everywhere.
Exactly. So what are the equivalent conversational shortcuts in your own life?
Oh, that's good.
Think about your specific workplace, your own family dinner table, or even your niche hobbies. What are the specific idiosyncratic phrases or shorthand terms you use that instantly signal to others in that group that you truly belong?
Because everyone has them.
Everyone. And once you recognize those shortcuts in your own life, you start to see the hidden, intricate architecture of human connection everywhere you look.
Think about your own secret handshakes today and just notice how they change the way people respond to you.
It'll definitely change how you see your own conversations.
It absolutely will. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this custom exploration of the source material. Remember, it is okay to put down the map sometimes and just experience the messy, wonderful territory of the real world. Have a great day, everyone.